everyone for being here. I have two good news for you. The first one is that I'm not going to go over my time, so you'll make it for your coffee break. And the second one is that luckily I'm not going to talk about my dataset work today. So. But this work is not totally unrelated to that. I'll be happy to discuss how they're related offline with you. Okay, so I'm going to discuss a new performance that I've done called Curves and Reverbs. And I call it mostly wearable to sound or a sonification project rather than a visualization one, even though it has a visual component, but the visual component is not dominant and hence it doesn't reflect in the title. All right. This is a project that fits under a larger performance that fits under a larger project that I'm doing. And all these performances in this line are there to create this kind of loop that you see in this diagram. I work to create a feedback loop in the sense between body, what I call affective data to mean data that I collect using biosensors, basically neurophysiological rhythms of the body, and then what I call data made sound, which is the transformation of this data into sound using different techniques, including but not limited to sonification. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about why of the project, like why is it that I'm interested in biosensors and I work with biosensors in real-time scenarios. So I'm an immigrant in exile and I found extremely difficult to communicate my experience and the complexity of my experience to people when I talk to them about how I feel and why I feel certain ways, particularly physiologically. And so, I had a background in science and technology, and I was already knew quite a bit about biosensors, and I thought it's a brilliant way of actually trying to leverage a techno-scientific pipeline to get at what I'm trying to do. And so, hence the interest in using biosensors over time in different projects. So what do biosensors do? Biosensors, in a way, distill your neurophysiological imprints to get at maybe what you can think about as quantification of emotions, but not so. So this is established within a field called affective computing. Affective computing basically thinks about the intersection of emotions and computability, even though emotions and computability are fundamentally at odds with one another. So the reason why is that affective states or your neurophysiological imprints in your body are precognitive, they're prior to emotions, they're complex, emergent, and individualized and not universal, and hence they cannot fit into a simplified reductive scheme of what is known as basic emotions theory, or a way of basically try to say we have fixed universalized buckets of emotions and we just process your data and fit your neurophysiological imprints into one of these buckets, and there you go. So in this sense, quantification through capturing biosignals, datifying these biosignals using systematic logging, and basically processing them using machine learning for classification, in a sense, doesn't turn unfortunately as emotions. So in a sense, this project is sort of a soft resistance approach towards what affective computing takes as its departure point. So I'm going to talk about this project, Curves and Reverbs. And I'm going to go through talking mostly about the technical background, and at the end, I'll discuss how I look at the project, discussing goals on 3 scales, basically. So going into neurophysiological imprints, the wearable that I use that you saw in the previous slide, emitting green light, basically captures 4 streams of data from the body. These 4 streams are blood volume pulse, or BVP, then electrodermal activity, or the microperspiration on your skin, accelerometer, which captures movement, and thermometer, which captures the skin temperature. I also use 3 derivatives that I compute out of the first stream of data, which is BVP, blood volume pulse, which are your heart rate, your blood oxygen level, and another indicative called interbeat interval, which is the distance between your heartbeats. So the more these distances are not quite the same, the more it's indicative of your stress response. So I will think about this project as a sonification project, as I talked to you about a minute ago, but not quite yet, and why that is. So if we think sonification of trying to tap into a cognitive way of understanding how data can look like, to give us a schematic of the data. So unlike this classic sonification approach, which basically taps into this headstrong way of communication, my aim is to use data as a way to create a kind of atmosphere where affect can be transferred through embodiment, can be sensed and felt in the body rather than being cognized. All right, so going again back into the technical realm. So here's the script that receives the live data from a mobile app that I developed. And this mobile app basically fetches the data from the wearable and processes it, normalizes it, also creates this lub-dub rhythm out of the BVP data to create illusion of the heart rate, which is not quite yet the heart rate, but you think it is. It sounds like the heart rate. And converts the pulse rate into the heart rate and sends it over to, I'll show you where to, using Open Sound Control, which is a protocol. It sends it over to a patch that I've written in Max. I'm not going to tell you what Max is because there's no time for that. I'll be happy to talk about it later on. So I'll send it over to a Max patch that I've written, and this Max patch basically sends the data over into specific instruments in a digital audio workstation called Ableton Live, which you also saw our friend earlier on was working with. So basically the data will be transferred over to instruments to be sonified in that sense. Okay, so I will now show you a short documentation where you can hear the audible heart rate and also hear slowly how other sounds that represent other streams of sensor data interlace this heart rate. There's sound here if you I will also show you another short clip which shows how the transition work when one participant takes off the wearable and pass it on to someone else, both audibly and also visibly. So if you look up right, you will be able to see this switch happening quickly. Could you turn the sound up a little bit? Now onto the visualization. So what I call visualization in this project is essentially data responsive footage. So I'm using already existing footage, which are mostly about violence against women in Iran. So, and they're basically documentary footages, mostly from violence against women in streets that protesters or activists just shot in the street and then uploaded anonymously on social media. So I use these footages as a way to get neurophysiological response, both from myself and from the audience in a participatory setting. So what happens is basically I attach streams of sensor data to the image, which means, for instance, in the one that I'm going to show you, it's attached to your pulse rate. And so what you will be able to see is the representation of your pulse rate on the image. If you pay attention, you might be able to sense the kind of like pulsating effect that happens on the image. So on a technical level, same principle applies. I send the data over using OSC to a custom software that captures the data, and then I attach it to different nodes in this program, which I will show you in the next slide, that are all programmable. And you can see the script behind one of these nodes. So all of these nodes are basically programmable. I get to decide how each one of these nodes behave and what kind of image manipulation it creates. In the next slide, I will show you a documentation of one of these data responsive footage while the performance was going on. All right, so that's, I think, it for the project. Now I'm just gonna go over the goals that I talked to you about earlier. So the goals of the project, on the macro scale, the project articulates an artistic vision for an integrative, nuanced approach to engaging with complexities of emotion through sonification and visualization. On the mesoscale, it reorients towards methodologies that embraces the full material, sociopolitical, and experiential dimensions of emotional experiences. And on a microscale, retraces the path from apparatuses of capture or techniques of capture to land back on and reactivate complex material forces that feed their operation, in this case, the body. Thank you.